My name is Olivia. I'm 32 years old, and I never imagined a single text message from my brother would turn my quiet Tuesday afternoon into the most terrifying week of my entire life. It was an ordinary day. Nothing unusual about it at first, just me working from home, catching up on emails at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee slowly going cold beside my laptop. I hadn't spoken to my brother Daniel in months, our relationship strained since our father's funeral, disagreements over the estate leaving things tense and distant between us for over a year. I still thought about him often, worried quietly in the background of my daily life, though pride and hurt feelings had kept either of us from being the first to reach out and repair things. My phone buzzed unexpectedly around 2 in the afternoon, and I glanced at the screen, surprised to see Daniel's name appear for the first time in what felt like several months at least. I opened the message immediately, my heart skipping slightly with a mixture of hope and confusion, wondering if this might finally be the beginning of some kind of reconciliation between us. Instead, the message read simply, "Kids are in a cab to your place." No greeting, no explanation, nothing beyond those 6 words sitting starkly on my phone screen without context. I stared at it for a moment, rereading the words slowly, trying to make sense of something that felt completely disconnected from any conversation we hadn't even been having recently. My first instinct was confusion, wondering if this was some kind of mistake, a text sent to the wrong contact, though Daniel's name remained clearly attached to the message itself. I typed back quickly, "What do you mean? What's going on?" My fingers moved fast across the screen, adrenaline already beginning to build steadily in my chest as I waited for his response. No reply came. I stared at the screen, watching for the 3 dots indicating he was typing, though nothing appeared, the silence stretching uncomfortably longer with each passing second. I tried calling him directly, pressing the phone against my ear, listening as it rang once, twice, 3 times, before finally going straight to his voicemail without any answer at all. "Daniel, call me back immediately," I said into the phone, my voice tighter than I intended. "What's happening? Why are your kids in a cab coming here? Please call me back." I set my phone down on the kitchen table, my hands trembling slightly, my mind racing through every possible explanation, though nothing reasonable came to mind for a message this alarming. I thought about Emma and Jacob, my niece and nephew, children I hadn't seen in months myself, wondering why on earth they'd be sent alone in a taxi across town without any warning. I stood up from the table, pacing slightly, glancing repeatedly at my phone, willing it to buzz again with some explanation that might make sense of everything happening so suddenly. 15 minutes felt like an eternity, my mind spiraling through worst-case scenarios, wondering if something had happened to Daniel, wondering why he'd trust me with this after so much distance. I checked the time obsessively, calculating roughly how long a taxi ride from his apartment might take, trying to prepare myself mentally for whatever was about to arrive at my front door. I glanced around my apartment quickly, realizing I wasn't prepared for children at all. No snacks, no toys, nothing suitable for an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old suddenly needing care. My phone remained stubbornly silent. No further messages, no explanation. Nothing beyond those original 6 words that had shattered the quiet ordinariness of my Tuesday afternoon completely. I tried calling Daniel again, my patience wearing thin, worry now fully overtaking my earlier confusion as the silence between his text and any follow-up explanation continued stretching on. Straight to voicemail again. I left another message, my voice shakier this time. "Daniel, please, I need you to call me back right now. I don't understand what's happening." I walked toward my living room window, glancing out anxiously toward the street, watching for any sign of an approaching taxi, my heart pounding steadily with mounting anxiety and confusion. Daniel and I had been close once, inseparable really, growing up just 2 years apart in the same small house outside Denver, sharing everything from bedrooms to birthdays throughout our childhood. Our falling out started at our father's funeral 18 months earlier, grief bringing out tension neither of us had expected, old resentment surfacing at the worst possible moment between us. Our father had left the house to be sold and split evenly, but disagreements arose quickly over furniture, sentimental items, and who should handle the sale, small disputes snowballing into something larger. I remember standing in our father's empty living room, arguing quietly with Daniel about who should keep our mother's old piano, both of us too raw with grief to handle the conversation gracefully. "You always think you deserve more," Daniel had said that day, his voice sharp with exhaustion and sorrow, words that stung deeply and stayed lodged uncomfortably between us ever since that afternoon. I'd said something equally hurtful back, accusing him of never showing up when our father needed help those last few years, leaving me to handle most of the caregiving responsibilities alone. Neither of us had meant those words fully, though pride kept either of us from apologizing afterward, the silence between us growing wider with each passing month instead of gradually closing. We'd exchanged a few brief messages around holidays, polite but distant, nothing resembling the closeness we'd once shared, both of us apparently waiting for the other to make the first real move. I'd heard secondhand from cousins that Daniel seemed to be struggling lately, though I'd never asked directly, assuming it was simply the stress of single parenthood combined with our unresolved conflict. I thought about reaching out several times over those months, drafting messages I never sent, uncertain whether he'd even want to hear from me after everything that had been said between us. Standing at my window now, waiting anxiously for that taxi, I regretted every one of those unsent messages, wishing desperately I'd pushed past my pride sooner to check on him properly. I thought about Emma and Jacob, wondering how much they understood about the distance between their father and me, wondering if they even remembered spending time at my apartment before. The last time I'd seen them was at the funeral itself, Emma clutching her father's hand tightly, Jacob too young then to fully understand the sadness surrounding that difficult, complicated day. I glanced at my phone again, still no response from Daniel, the silence feeling heavier now that I understood more clearly just how much unresolved tension existed beneath his sudden, alarming message. I tried calling him one more time, listening to it ring through again before reaching his voicemail, my frustration mounting alongside the fear steadily building throughout my entire body. I paced back toward my window, checking the street again, my mind cycling through memories of happier times, birthday parties, holiday dinners, before grief and money had complicated everything between us. I wondered what could have happened recently to make Daniel trust me again so suddenly, sending his children to me specifically, despite our strained relationship over these past 18 difficult months. Whatever had happened, it must have felt urgent enough to override his pride too, urgent enough to reach out to the sister he hadn't spoken to properly in well over a year at this point. I felt my chest tighten with worry, wondering if something had happened to him directly, an accident, an emergency, something serious enough to explain this desperate, wordless request for help. I checked the time again, realizing nearly 20 minutes had now passed since his original text, the taxi ride from his apartment typically taking closer to 15 minutes under normal traffic conditions. Just as that thought crossed my mind, I saw a yellow taxi turning slowly onto my street, moving toward my building, my heart immediately beginning to pound harder as I watched it approach. I rushed toward my front door, throwing it open, stepping outside onto my porch just as the taxi pulled fully into my driveway, its brake lights glowing steadily in the late afternoon sunlight. The afternoon stretched on slowly, Emma and Jacob eventually settling into a quiet cartoon on my living room television while I hovered nearby, checking my phone every few minutes without fail. I texted Daniel again around 4 o'clock. "Please, I just need to know you're okay. The kids are fine, but I'm getting scared." The message sat there, delivered but unread, no response coming through. I tried calling once more an hour later, listening again to his voicemail greeting, his recorded voice sounding almost mocking now, given how urgently I needed to actually hear him speak. "Daniel, this isn't funny anymore," I said after the beep, my voice cracking slightly. "Please, whatever's going on, just tell me you're safe. I don't know what to do here." I set my phone down, glancing toward the living room where Jacob had fallen asleep against Emma's shoulder, exhaustion clearly catching up with him despite the unfamiliar surroundings around him. Emma looked over at me quietly, her expression far too knowing for an 8-year-old. "Daddy does this sometimes," she said softly. "Goes quiet for a while. He always comes back, though." Her words landed heavily in my chest, a mixture of relief that this might not be entirely unprecedented, and deep concern about exactly what goes quiet had meant for these children before now. "Has this happened before?" I asked carefully, keeping my voice gentle, not wanting to alarm her further while also desperately needing whatever information she might be willing to share with me. She nodded slightly, glancing down at Jacob sleeping against her. "Sometimes he gets really tired and sad. He goes away for a little bit. Mrs. Patterson next door usually watches us then." I felt my stomach twist uncomfortably at this revelation, understanding now that whatever Daniel was struggling with clearly ran deeper than I'd realized during our year of distance and silence. "Why didn't he send you to Mrs. Patterson this time?" I asked gently, genuinely curious, though some part of me already suspected the answer might reveal something significant about his state of mind. Emma shrugged slightly. "She's on vacation. He said you were the only other person he trusted." Her simple explanation carried unexpected weight, considering everything unresolved between Daniel and me. I sat with that information for a moment, processing the fact that despite our estrangement, despite everything left unsaid between us, he'd still chosen me when he needed somewhere safe for his children. I texted him once more, softer this time. "Emma told me you needed somewhere safe for them. I understand more now. Please just let me know you're okay. I'm not angry, I promise." Still nothing. The message sat there, delivered, unread, the silence stretching on uncomfortably as the afternoon light outside my windows slowly began shifting toward evening's approaching darkness. I busied myself preparing dinner for the kids, keeping half my attention on the stove and half constantly checking my phone, hoping desperately for any sign that Daniel had finally responded. Jacob woke up briefly, rubbing his eyes sleepily, asking quietly for his dad, and I felt my heart break slightly, explaining gently that Daddy was taking care of some things, but would be back soon. I hoped that promise was true, though doubt continued creeping in steadily as the hours passed without any word, my earlier anxiety slowly transforming into something closer to genuine mounting dread. After dinner, I helped both children settle into pajamas I'd hastily borrowed from a neighbor, trying to maintain some semblance of routine despite the uncertainty hanging heavily over the entire evening. I tucked them into my guest room together, Emma insisting Jacob sleep beside her, both of them clearly finding comfort in each other's presence amid everything unfamiliar happening around them. Once they were finally settled, I returned to my kitchen, staring at my silent phone, understanding that Daniel's continued absence meant something far more serious than I'd initially allowed myself to consider. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, trying to think of anyone else who might know something about Daniel's whereabouts, or what had prompted this sudden, alarming disappearance. I remembered he worked at a regional logistics company downtown, a job he'd held for several years now, and I searched quickly for their general number, hoping someone there might have answers. A receptionist picked up after a few rings, her voice pleasant and professional, completely unaware of the anxiety building steadily on my end of the line as I explained who I was calling about. "I'm trying to reach my brother, Daniel Hayes," I said carefully. "I'm concerned about him. Has he been at work the past few days? I haven't been able to reach him since yesterday afternoon." There was a brief pause before she responded, her tone shifting slightly. "Let me check on that for you," she said, and I heard typing in the background as she pulled up whatever records she needed. "It looks like he hasn't clocked in for 3 days," she said finally. "His supervisor actually left a message for him yesterday, too. We were starting to get concerned here as well, honestly." My stomach dropped at that information, 3 days feeling significantly longer and more serious than the few hours I'd initially been worried about since receiving his cryptic text earlier that day. "Do you know if anyone's spoken to him directly?" I asked. my voice tightening with mounting concern as the timeline of his absence suddenly extended far beyond what I'd originally understood. "Not that I'm aware of," she said. "He didn't call in sick or request time off. He just stopped showing up, which honestly isn't like him. He's usually very reliable and communicative." I thanked her quickly, ending the call, my hands trembling now as this new information settled uncomfortably into everything else I already knew about his sudden, unexplained disappearance. 3 days. He'd been missing from work for 3 entire days, meaning whatever had happened had started well before that alarming text message reached my phone earlier this afternoon. I thought immediately of his neighbor, an older woman named Diane, who I vaguely remembered from occasional family gatherings years earlier, back when Daniel and I still spoke more regularly. I searched through old contacts, relieved to find her number still saved from years before, dialing quickly, hoping she might have noticed something useful about Daniel's recent behavior or whereabouts. She answered after a few rings, her voice warm and familiar, despite the years that had passed since we'd last spoken directly about anything beyond brief pleasantries during family visits. "Olivia, it's been so long," she said kindly, though her tone shifted quickly to concern once I explained why I was calling and what had happened with Daniel and the children that afternoon. "I did notice something odd yesterday morning," she said slowly, clearly trying to recall the details accurately. "I saw Daniel loading suitcases into his car, very early, before the kids were even up." My breath caught at that detail, suitcases suggesting something far more deliberate and planned than a sudden, impulsive decision made in a moment of panic or crisis that same day. "Did he say anything to you?" I asked, desperate for any additional information that might help explain what was happening or where he might have gone during these past 3 days. "No," she said. "He looked exhausted, honestly, like he hadn't slept properly in days. I almost asked if he needed help, but he seemed like he wanted to be left alone that morning." I thanked her, ending the call, sitting quietly at my kitchen table, processing everything I'd just learned, understanding now that Daniel's disappearance had clearly been building for some time already. Suitcases, exhaustion, 3 days missing from work, all of it painting a picture far more serious than I'd initially allowed myself to fully consider throughout that long, uncertain afternoon. I glanced toward my guest room where Emma and Jacob were finally sleeping peacefully, understanding that whatever had happened to their father, I needed to take this seriously enough to involve the eye. The taxi door opened slowly, and I watched my niece Emma climb out first, clutching a small backpack against her chest, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar driveway with obvious uncertainty. She was 8 years old now, taller than I remembered, her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail that looked like it had been done quickly, without much care or attention that morning. Behind her, my nephew Jacob climbed out next, only 5 years old, gripping a stuffed animal tightly in one arm while his other hand instinctively reached for his sister's sleeve beside him. Both children looked exhausted, their clothes slightly wrinkled, the kind of rumpled appearance that suggested they'd been wearing them for longer than just a single afternoon taxi ride across town. I hurried down my porch steps, my heart pounding as I approached them, taking in every detail, searching their faces for any clue about what might have happened to bring them here so suddenly. "Emma? Jacob?" I said, keeping my voice as gentle and steady as I could manage despite the anxiety still churning uncomfortably inside my chest since that first alarming text message arrived. Emma looked up at me, her expression a mixture of relief and confusion, clearly recognizing me from years earlier, though uncertainty still lingered visibly behind her tired, searching eyes. "Aunt Olivia?" she asked quietly, her voice small and uncertain, the kind of hesitant tone children use when they're trying to determine whether an unfamiliar situation is actually safe. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me," I said, kneeling down slightly to meet her eye level, trying desperately to project calm reassurance despite the panic still building steadily beneath my composed exterior. The taxi driver stepped out too, opening the trunk, pulling out a small duffel bag and 2 backpacks, setting them carefully on my driveway before glancing toward me expectantly for payment. "Someone needs to pay for this ride," he said, not unkindly, though his tone carried the practical urgency of someone simply trying to complete his job and move on to his next scheduled fare. I nodded quickly, reaching for my wallet, though my mind was still racing, still trying to process the situation unfolding in front of me on my own driveway that ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Jacob stayed close to Emma's side, still gripping his stuffed animal tightly, his wide eyes taking in the unfamiliar house, the unfamiliar street, everything clearly overwhelming for someone so young. "Are you hungry? Tired?" I asked gently, trying to assess their immediate needs while my mind continued spinning through unanswered questions about their father and why they'd been sent here alone. Emma nodded slightly, though she didn't elaborate further, her attention focused mainly on watching me carefully, seeming to gauge whether I could actually be trusted with whatever situation they were facing. I paid the driver quickly, my hands still slightly unsteady, watching him climb back into his taxi and pull away from my driveway, leaving the three of us standing there together in uncertain silence. I picked up their bags myself, not wanting to overwhelm them further by asking too many questions immediately, understanding instinctively that they needed gentleness before anything else right now. "Let's go inside," I said softly, guiding them toward my front door, Jacob's small hand finding mine hesitantly as we walked together up the porch steps toward the house he barely remembered. Emma followed closely behind, glancing back once toward the street where the taxi had already disappeared, as if checking whether her father might somehow appear behind it, following shortly after them. I opened my front door, ushering them both inside, my mind still racing with unanswered questions, though I forced myself to focus entirely on making them feel safe and comfortable first. Once inside, I set their bags down near the entryway, turning to look at both of them properly, searching their faces gently for any clue about what had actually happened to their father. Emma looked up at me then, her small shoulders relaxing slightly now that we were safely inside, though her expression remained serious, far too serious for an 8-year-old, as she finally spoke. "Daddy said you'd take care of us," Emma said quietly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty still visible in her eyes as she watched carefully for my reaction to those words. I felt my chest tighten painfully at her statement, kneeling down again to meet her eye level, trying to keep my own rising panic from showing too clearly on my face in front of them. "Of course I will, sweetheart," I said gently, reaching out to squeeze her small shoulder reassuringly. "You're both safe here with me. I just need to understand what's happening with your dad." Jacob tugged gently on my sleeve, his stuffed animal still clutched tightly against his chest. "Is Daddy okay?" he asked, his small voice carrying a worry that felt far too heavy for a 5-year-old. "I'm going to find out right now," I said, forcing calm into my voice despite the anxiety building steadily inside me since that first cryptic text message had arrived on my phone earlier. I guided them both toward my living room couch, helping them settle in with their bags nearby, trying to create some sense of normalcy despite the chaos still swirling uncertainly around us. "I'll be right back," I told them, stepping into my kitchen where I could make the call privately, not wanting to alarm them further if the conversation with Daniel turned difficult or emotional. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled up his contact information, pressing the call button, listening as the phone began ringing on the other end, each tone stretching out uncomfortably long. It rang once, the sound cutting off abruptly before switching immediately to his voicemail greeting, his familiar recorded voice sounding strange now given everything happening around his sudden disappearance. "Daniel, it's me," I said after the beep, keeping my voice as steady as possible despite the fear building rapidly inside my chest. "The kids are here, they're safe, but I need you to call me back." I ended the call, staring at my phone screen, my mind racing through every possible explanation for why he'd send his children away so suddenly, without any further communication or explanation. I glanced back toward the living room, watching Emma quietly comforting Jacob, the two of them huddled together on my couch, clearly more accustomed to relying on each other than on adults right now. I tried texting him again, my fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Daniel, please call me. The kids arrived safely, but I don't understand what's happening. I'm worried about you." I hit send, watching the message appear instantly beneath our previous exchange, the single line from earlier now joined by my own increasingly desperate attempts to reach him for answers. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter, taking a deep breath, trying to steady myself before returning to the living room where Emma and Jacob were waiting quietly for some reassurance. "Is he going to call you back?" Emma asked the moment I walked back in, her perceptive eyes catching my expression despite my attempts to appear calm and composed in front of them. "I hope so, sweetheart," I said honestly, sitting down beside them on the couch. "In the meantime, are you two hungry? I think I have some snacks in the kitchen we could find together." Jacob nodded slightly, though his expression remained serious, clearly picking up on the underlying tension despite my efforts to redirect their attention toward something more comforting and familiar. I stood up, leading them toward my kitchen, trying to focus on small, manageable tasks, pouring juice, finding crackers, anything that might create a small sense of normalcy amid the uncertainty. Throughout it all, my phone sat silently on the counter. No response yet from Daniel, the growing silence feeling increasingly ominous with every passing minute that ticked by without any word. I checked it repeatedly while preparing their small snack, my anxiety mounting steadily, understanding that something serious must be happening for Daniel to go completely silent like this. I dialed the non-emergency police line, my voice shaking slightly as I explained the situation to the dispatcher, the words tumbling out faster than I intended in my growing panic. "My brother sent his children to me in a taxi, then went completely silent," I said. "He hasn't been to work in 3 days. His neighbor saw him loading suitcases into his car yesterday morning." The dispatcher took down the information calmly, asking careful questions about Daniel's last known location, his vehicle description, and any history of similar behavior that might help their search efforts. "Has he ever done anything like this before?" she asked. And I hesitated, thinking of Emma's earlier comment about her father. Going quiet sometimes, though I still didn't fully understand what that meant. His daughter mentioned he sometimes disappears for short periods when he's struggling, I admitted honestly. But nothing like this. Not 3 days, not sending the kids away like this before. She assured me an officer would follow up soon and that they'd enter his information into their system, checking hospitals, checking any reported incidents, doing everything possible to help locate him quickly. I gave them my address, Daniel's last known address, and every detail I could think of, feeling a strange mixture of relief that something official was finally being done, and continued dread about outcomes. After ending the call, I sat quietly at my kitchen table for a long moment, staring at the darkness outside my window, trying to process everything that had unfolded throughout that overwhelming day. I checked on Emma and Jacob one more time before finally attempting sleep myself, watching them breathe peacefully in the dim light, grateful at least that they seemed unaware of how serious things had become. The next 2 days passed in an anxious blur, my phone constantly nearby, jumping at every notification, hoping desperately for news while trying to maintain normalcy for 2 frightened children. I took time off work, focusing entirely on Emma and Jacob, cooking their favorite meals, helping Emma with homework she'd brought along, playing simple games with Jacob to keep him distracted. Emma asked about her father constantly, her perceptive nature making it difficult to shield her fully from my own mounting worry, though I tried my best to remain calm and reassuring for her sake. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" she asked one evening while I helped her braid her hair before bed, her voice small and uncertain, despite trying hard to sound braver than she probably felt inside. "I believe he will be," I told her honestly, though uncertainty gnawed steadily at me beneath my calm exterior, unsure whether that promise was something I could actually guarantee to either of them. Jacob, thankfully too young to fully grasp the seriousness of the situation, seemed to adjust more easily, finding comfort in routine, in cartoons, in the small stuffed animal he carried everywhere with him. I called the police station daily for updates, though information remained frustratingly limited. Officers explaining they were actively searching, but had no concrete leads on Daniel's exact whereabouts yet. I barely slept those 2 nights, lying awake replaying every conversation, every unanswered message, wondering what I could have done differently to prevent whatever crisis had led to this point. I thought often about our estrangement, wondering if reaching out sooner might have revealed whatever struggle Daniel had clearly been hiding from everyone, myself included, for longer than I'd realized. By the second evening, exhaustion and worry had settled permanently into my bones, though I forced myself to stay composed for Emma and Jacob's sake, refusing to let them see how frightened I truly was. I tucked them into bed that second night, reading a story Emma requested, watching Jacob's eyes grow heavy, grateful for small moments of normalcy amid the overwhelming uncertainty surrounding us. Just as I finally settled onto my own couch that evening, exhausted but unable to sleep, my phone rang unexpectedly, an unfamiliar number appearing on the screen, my heart immediately leaping into my throat. I answered quickly, my hands trembling slightly. "Hello?" I said, my voice tight with anticipation, bracing myself for whatever news waited on the other end of that unexpected call. "Is this Olivia Hayes?" a man's voice asked, professional but calm. "This is Officer Reyes. I'm calling about your brother, Daniel. We have some information regarding his whereabouts now." My heart pounded as I waited for him to continue, sitting up straighter on my couch, gripping the phone tightly, unsure whether to brace for relief or devastating news in that uncertain moment. "We located his vehicle," the officer said. "It was found abandoned near a treatment facility in Colorado, about 3 states away from your location. We're still confirming additional details currently." "A treatment facility?" I repeated, confusion and relief tangling together as I tried to process what that phrase actually meant regarding Daniel's condition and whatever had led him there so suddenly. "Yes, ma'am," he said gently. "It appears your brother checked himself in voluntarily a few days ago. We're working to confirm this directly with the facility, but that's what our initial information shows." I felt my chest loosen slightly, relief flooding through me at the confirmation that Daniel was alive, though new questions immediately began forming about exactly what kind of treatment he'd sought out. "What kind of facility?" I asked carefully, though some part of me already suspected the answer, remembering Emma's earlier comment about her father going quiet and seeming exhausted and sad sometimes. "I don't have full details yet," the officer said honestly, "but it appears to be a substance abuse treatment center. We're working with them now to verify his identity and confirm his current condition." The pieces suddenly clicked together painfully in my mind. Months of distance, Daniel's exhaustion, the suitcases, his sudden desperate need to ensure his children were safe before disappearing completely. "Is he okay?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly despite my efforts to stay composed while processing this overwhelming combination of relief and heartbreak, settling simultaneously over me. "From what we understand, he's stable and safe within the facility," the officer said reassuringly. "They should be able to provide you with more information once they've confirmed everything on their end." I thanked him repeatedly, my emotions swirling uncontrollably. Relief that Daniel was alive colliding directly with heartbreak, realizing how much he must have been silently struggling without telling anyone, including me. After ending the call, I sat quietly on my couch for several long minutes, processing everything, tears finally falling freely now that the immediate fear of the unknown had finally been resolved completely. I thought about Emma's words again, about her father going quiet sometimes, understanding now with painful clarity that she'd likely witnessed far more of his struggle than any child ever should have to. I glanced toward the guest room where both children slept peacefully, grateful they were unaware yet of exactly what their father had been fighting against, though eventually they'd need some age-appropriate explanation. I wondered how long Daniel had been struggling silently, wondered why he hadn't reached out to me sooner despite our estrangement, wondered how much shame had kept him isolated throughout his private battle. I thought about the diamond of trust in this situation, the fact that despite everything unresolved between us, he'd still chosen me as the person safe enough to protect his children during his darkest moment. I wiped my eyes, steadying myself, understanding I needed rest before facing whatever conversations lay ahead, though sleep still felt impossibly distant given everything I'd just learned that evening. I checked my phone one more time before finally attempting to sleep myself, hoping desperately that the treatment facility would allow me to speak with Daniel directly as soon as possible the following day. The next morning arrived slowly, sunlight filtering through my curtains as I prepared breakfast for Emma and Jacob, my mind still processing everything from the previous night's unexpected, overwhelming phone call. Around midday, my phone finally rang again, a different number this time, and something in my chest tightened with anticipation, sensing immediately that this call might finally connect me directly with Daniel himself. I answered quickly, my heart pounding. "Hello?" A brief pause followed, and then I heard his voice, weak and unsteady, unmistakably my brother's for the first time in what felt like forever. "Olivia," Daniel said, his voice cracking immediately on that single word, carrying more emotion than I'd heard from him in years, maybe since before our father had passed away entirely. "Daniel?" I breathed, relief and heartbreak colliding instantly inside me at finally hearing his voice directly, confirming he was truly alive and reachable after these agonizing, uncertain days apart. "Are the kids okay?" he asked immediately, his voice trembling, clearly more concerned about Emma and Jacob's well-being than anything regarding his own current situation or condition right now. "They're safe," I assured him gently. "They miss you, but they're eating well, sleeping okay. Emma's been so brave for Jacob. They're doing as well as can be expected, Daniel." He was quiet for a moment, and I could hear him struggling to compose himself on the other end of the line, his breathing unsteady, clearly overwhelmed by emotions he was trying hard to control. "I'm so sorry," he finally said, his voice breaking completely now. "I know I scared you. I know sending them like that without explanation was wrong. But I didn't know what else to do." "Tell me what happened," I said softly, keeping my voice gentle, understanding instinctively that whatever he needed to share required patience rather than judgment or immediate questions demanding answers. He took a shaky breath before continuing. "I've been struggling for a while now. Drinking mostly. It got worse after Dad died. I thought I could handle it alone, but I couldn't anymore." I felt tears welling up again, listening to him admit something clearly so difficult, understanding now the full weight behind Emma's earlier comment about her father going quiet, sometimes at home. "I couldn't let them see me like that anymore," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Not getting worse. I needed help, real help, and I needed to know they'd be safe first." "Why didn't you call me directly?" I asked gently, not accusingly, genuinely wanting to understand his thought process, despite everything unresolved still sitting quietly between us before this crisis happened. "I was ashamed," he admitted honestly. "After everything with Dad's estate, after everything I said to you, I didn't think I deserved to ask you for help, but I trusted you with them completely. You were the only person I trusted to keep them safe," he said again, his voice breaking further. "Despite everything between us, I never doubted that you'd take care of them properly." I closed my eyes, absorbing his words fully, understanding that whatever anger or hurt I'd carried from our estrangement suddenly felt insignificant compared to what actually mattered in this moment. "I checked myself into treatment," he continued. "Anonymously at first. I was too ashamed to explain everything to anyone, even the intake staff, until I'd been here a full day myself." "How are you feeling now?" I asked carefully, genuinely wanting to understand his current state, both physically and emotionally, after everything he'd apparently been struggling through completely alone. "Exhausted," he admitted. "Scared, but also relieved somehow. Like I can finally breathe properly for the first time in months. I just wish I'd reached out for help so much sooner." We were both quiet for a moment, the weight of everything settling between us. Old resentments feeling remarkably small now, compared to the relief of simply hearing his voice again after days of terrifying silence. I don't know how long I'll be here, he said quietly. But I need you to know how grateful I am, Olivia. For taking them in, for not asking questions, for still being someone I could trust. I felt my own voice catch slightly, emotion building steadily as I prepared to respond. Understanding this moment required something more meaningful than simply accepting his gratitude passively right now. I took a steadying breath before responding, understanding that whatever I said next would matter deeply, not just for Daniel's recovery, but for rebuilding whatever trust remained between us. I didn't say a word about anger or hurt, I told myself silently, choosing my words carefully, understanding this moment called for support rather than dwelling on old wounds between us. Daniel, I said gently, I'm not angry with you. Whatever happened between us before, it doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you're safe and getting the help you actually need. He was quiet for a moment, and I could hear him crying softly on the other end, the sound both heartbreaking and strangely hopeful, evidence that he was finally allowing himself to feel everything fully. They're safe, I told him firmly. Emma and Jacob are here with me, and they're going to stay safe for as long as you need. You don't have to worry about them while you focus on yourself. Get better, I continued, my own voice thick with emotion now. Take whatever time you need. We'll be here waiting for you, all three of us, whenever you're ready to come home. Thank you, he whispered, his voice barely audible through his tears. I don't deserve this kind of support after everything, but I promise I'm going to get better. For them. For myself, too. You don't have to earn our love, Daniel, I said softly. You're my brother. That's not something that changes because of mistakes or distance or anything else that's happened between us. We talked a little longer, him explaining briefly about the treatment program's structure, promising to call again soon, both of us reluctant to end the call despite everything else waiting for our attention. I love you, he said quietly before hanging up. Words neither of us had exchanged easily and longer than I could remember, feeling suddenly necessary and true after everything we'd both just experienced. I love you too, I replied, my voice breaking slightly as I said it, meaning it completely despite months of unresolved tension that had kept us distant from each other for far too long. After the call ended, I sat quietly for a long moment, processing everything, relief and emotional exhaustion washing over me simultaneously as the weight of the past few days finally began settling properly. I heard small footsteps approaching from the hallway and looked up to see Emma standing there, Jacob trailing sleepily behind her, both of them clearly having woken from their afternoon nap moments earlier. Was that Daddy? Emma asked immediately, her eyes wide with hope, her entire posture shifting the moment she suspected the phone call might have finally connected with her father directly. It was, I said, smiling gently despite my own lingering emotion, kneeling down to meet both children at their eye level as they approached me cautiously across the living room floor. Is he okay? Jacob asked, his small voice still thick with sleepiness, though clearly alert enough to understand the significance of whatever news I might be about to share with them both. He's getting help, I said carefully, choosing age-appropriate words. He's somewhere safe where doctors are helping him feel better. He loves you both so much, and he misses you already. Emma's eyes filled with tears, relief clearly flooding through her small body as months of unspoken worry finally found some resolution through this simple confirmation that her father was truly safe. I opened my arms, and both children moved instinctively toward me, and I hugged them tightly, holding them close, feeling their small bodies relax slightly against the reassurance of that embrace. He's going to be okay, I whispered, partly to comfort them, partly to reassure myself, understanding that healing would take time, but that the most important thing right now was that we were all safe together. My name is Olivia, and holding my niece and nephew close that afternoon, I understood that sometimes the most broken moments in a family can become the beginning of rebuilding something stronger than before.